cruise news time. Well, Royal Caribbean, they're changing their tune. There's some common questions we all have, and now Royal Caribbean has switched up the way they answer those questions, and it's pretty interesting in regards to the restart of cruising. And I want to do a little follow-up on the conversation we had yesterday about the CDC. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lido Loca. I'm your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. Well, I got a stomach flu or something. Sorry for the late show, but I've been struggling the last 18 hours, and I still don't feel great. But I did not want to miss out on the opportunity to follow up on yesterday's show. In yesterday's show, we talked about the CDC and where they were in response to the framework for conditional sailing, and a lot of great comments. Now, overwhelmingly, the comments beat the drum that the CDC, they're out to destroy cruising. And if you've watched the channel for any period of time, you know that I don't feel like that. There was a great question asked. Let me pull it up, and it'll be a good jumping off point. Shauna Stevenson asked, you still love the CDC, or do you now understand Don's frustration? They have the power, not going to give it up. That's a great comment. I just wanted to say a couple of things. I always understand the frustration of people that don't agree with me. I mean, at least that's what I try to do. I think that's what we're supposed to do. And so I certainly understand the frustration of my friend Don. And do I still love the CDC? Well, you know, I don't really love the CDC. Maybe I've come on too strong. Maybe I told you guys about us dating back in high school. I don't really love the CDC, but I also don't love wasted negative energy. And I believe a lot of people waste negative energy on whether or not the government is out to destroy cruising in the form of the CDC. Let me use a little bit of a story time to tell you what I saw in that video yesterday. I used to lead a global IT organization for a Fortune 500 company. I was just a cog in a bigger machine. I had a boss above me, and he had a boss above him. And every week we would come together and approve or disapprove IT projects. It was a process called the change management. Now, there was a group of programmers kind of annoying where I worked, and that was the SAP team. They were all fine people, but they were always making outrageous claims with short timelines. So if they wanted to make change to their application, they had to submit a request to the change board, and then every week we would sit in here and have this. Now, I didn't speak in the change board. Like I said, I was a couple levels of leadership removed, but my boss did. And so every week before that meeting, we would have a meeting, and he would say, hey, Tony, I know I made you the liaison to the SAP team. What are these guys on about this week? And so I would anticipate the questions they had. I would detail the projects so that when he went to speak, he would be prepared for questions that he would be getting. That's a long way to get there to say that if you look at that exchange between Dr. Walensky and Senator Murkowski. Well, let me just play it. This is the exchange from yesterday, just to refresh you.
At the end of 2021, does it mean in 3 months? Does it mean in 1 month? What kind of guidance can you provide when it comes to the CDC's order as it relates to the conditional sail order?
Thank you for that question. First of all, I understand the economic impact of the no sail, the conditional sail, and the travel, and so we don't take that lightly. We have provided technical assistance on the conditional sail, where we've provided a 4-phase strategy for how we could get sail open. We are in phase 1 of that, moving towards phase 2. This is an interagency decision. It is not a decision solely up to the CDC. So I would be remiss if I was able to do that by myself, because the decision is not solely up to us. What I will
second phase, going to that second phase, can you give me some indicator in terms of a timeline there?
I can't, simply because I don't believe it's solely in our jurisdiction to address. It's not necessarily a CDC.
So who else is part of the decision-making process then beyond CDC?
I believe Department of Transportation, OMB. There are numerous others that are making these decisions.
I don't see any malintent coming out of that conversation toward the cruise lines. What I see is a boss who is unprepared. And one thing that we struggle with as a cruise community is how unimportant cruising is in the scheme of things. Now, certainly anybody who feeds their family because of cruise tourism, it's paramountly important. But if you stack that up with the rest of the things that are going on in the country, it's minimal. We're talking about cruising, you know, the foreign leisure travel. There's a lot of weird components in cruising. It's foreign travel, it's leisure travel, it's non-essential travel to the majority of people that don't make their living on it. And so yeah, I don't see any malice toward cruising. I see apathy and unpreparedness. Somebody should have done a better job of getting the director a better answer to that question, because if you have any idea about the stakeholders that are coming to your meeting, you can anticipate the questions. And I think that was an obvious question when you were talking about interfacing with the senator from Alaska. You know the question is going to be, when can we restart? Can I tell people they can have tourism or they cannot have tourism? That's not a hard question. And so it's not a stretch for me to say that the director is not directly in contact with the effort for cruising, that there's somebody in charge of cruising, that the cruise lines interface with, that reports up to the director. And I feel like whoever that person was didn't do a great job of preparing the director to answer that question. But go watch it again. I don't see malice in her eyes. I think it's hard to write this narrative that the government's out to kill cruising. Honestly, at the end of the day, I just don't think they care about cruising at that level, that cruising has been regulated off to some other manager reporting up to the director. So, I mean, that's what I see in that clip. But on the heels of that, there comes a very interesting video put forth by Richard Fain, the CEO of the Royal Caribbean Group. These are videos that he does periodically. He releases them through email and other forms to the travel community. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to interview the clips of Richard Fain. But let's just highlight a few things. Let's highlight the things that we're all looking for. He answers 3 really big questions, and he does change his tune. He answers 3 really big questions. When will cruising restart? What about vaccines? And what about the CDC? And honestly, the best question is about when will cruising restart, so I'll put that one at the end, and let's talk about the other things. First, what about the CDC? Richard, what's the deal with the CDC framework for conditional sailing? What can we expect?
Another key question we get is, what about the CDC's conditional sail order? And when will their next technical rules be issued?
Yeah.
That's more complicated, but it's still very important. The CDC issued the conditional sail order last October in an effort to provide a path for cruising to reopen in the United States. The CDC has an amazing responsibility throughout the United States, and we all know they are working incredibly hard to balance the risks of the disease while limiting the pain and suffering to society. As most of you know, the order called for several phases and for the CDC to issue detailed technical rules for each phase. The first of such technical rules was scheduled to be released in December, and many of you has asked when we expect to receive them. In fact, I would answer that the pace of science has simply overcome that process. When the conditional sail order was written, there were no vaccines. The disease was on an upward trajectory and heading towards a terrible peak. Testing was less available and more costly, and therapeutics were limited. In general, the situation looked very bleak back then. What a difference 5 months makes. Today, the vaccines and other measures have changed the trajectory from a steep climb to a dramatic fall. The pandemic isn't under control, but it is getting there, and society is beginning to open up. I was thrilled when the CDC said that now that I'm vaccinated, I could play with my extraordinary grandchildren without a mask. I was over the moon when they said it was safe for school children to sit 3 feet apart instead of 6. So we're making important and impressive progress. Last October, preparing for resumption of service based on extensive protocols made good sense. But today, a vaccine approach makes much more sense than this old protocol-based approach. The vaccines are bringing down the incidence of COVID-19 in society. The testing enables us to catch cases early, and the preparation we're doing allows us to handle individual cases safely and simply. We don't know what the CDC is contemplating to address this very different set of circumstances. But just as they and other public health officials are doing elsewhere, we expect they will all adjust to the changes that have been and are taking place today. The conditional sale order was a very positive step at the time, but that time is past. We look forward to a constructive dialogue with health officials in the United States and elsewhere for the path forward under these new circumstances. It takes months to reactivate a ship, so we're not talking about restarting in the U.S. right away anyhow. But the advances in science and medical knowledge are extraordinary, and we believe that with them we can prudently and safely plan now for our summer sailings. And we'd like to do so. Of course, things can change, and if there is a surprise from a variant or from something else unforeseen, we and public health officials clearly understand that we'll have to adjust to take any unexpected circumstances into account. But since it takes so long to activate a ship, we need to start planning now. And we need to base our planning decisions on where the science says we're likely to be, not where we were in the past or we are at any given moment.
All right, so a lot of information there. I think a lot of good information. I speculated in the video yesterday that maybe the tool that restarts cruising here in the US will not be the framework for conditional sailing. You can hear that echoed a little bit in what Richard Fain is saying. Another key takeaway is, look, we're not planning on starting cruising real quick in the US, but he does later in the video talk about a summer restart. And so obviously he's not talking about starting cruising in, April, May, but it does seem like they're eyeing that, July time frame. They still have cruises scheduled for June, so I don't know if they're eyeing the June time frame, but I really like this message. And so, one of the hardest things about leadership is the ability to be a change agent. And with this whole pandemic, there's a lot of people that tend to look at what happened in March of 2020 and then hold everybody to that standard, when in reality, things have changed over time. So, Richard Fain says it fairly clearly to me that the CDC's no-sell order and their approach to the restart of cruising may have outlived its purpose, and it could be interesting to see if maybe the cruise lines will be working one-on-one with the CDC outside of that framework. But that was the longest clip. The other ones will be shorter, but that is what he said. The question is, what about vaccines on cruise ships? Let's cue up that clip.
Now, the next most common question is, will vaccines be required to cruise? And the answer to that is, we don't know. We have announced 3 cruises that will require inoculations for all adults, and there are likely to be more. But each circumstance is different, and I would note that the cruises we are currently operating are operating without requiring vaccines. But the vaccines set the stage for whatever we do. And all of our efforts are designed to make our cruises safer than walking down Main Street, USA. The situation changes every day, and we will be guided throughout by the science as it evolves and gets better and more accurate.
All right, so certainly an important question. Will vaccines be required on Royal Caribbean cruises? Right now, it's a cruise-by-cruise basis, and so the factors that are going into it may not be the same everywhere that Royal Caribbean cruises. And he does point out that the majority of cruising that they have going on right now is without a vaccine and only health protocols. So there's still no strong answer to the vaccine question for cruises out of the United States. But the trend has been, certainly with their new cruises in the Caribbean, cruises in Israel, that there will be a vaccine requirement. And then finally, here's the big question. When will cruising restart? I'm going to give it to you right from the top of this video. How many people do you think have cruised on Royal Caribbean since the shutdown, and how many COVID cases do you think they have? In Richard's answer here, he gives you that nugget. Pay attention for that.
Hello to all of our travel advisor friends and partners. As always, it's a pleasure to share with you some observations, but this time with a difference. No longer are we talking about when will cruising restart. Cruising has already restarted. The Royal Caribbean Group has now carried more than 100,000 guests on over 150 cruises during the pandemic. And out of the 100,000 guests, we've only had 10 people test positive for the COVID virus. 10. And all of them have been handled smoothly and without undue disruption of other guest cruises, and without undue burden on the communities and the governments involved. This is really our objective. Few infections, and certainly lower than would be expected in the surrounding community. All handled smoothly without ruining everybody's vacation. Protection of guests and the surrounding community from a big spread of the virus. Our experience with these 100,000 guests is a very powerful proof of concept. In essence, we've just had 100,000 test cruisers and demonstrated that the process works. Yippee!
Boom, so there, Royal has changed their tune. No longer going to speculate a date for when cruising will restart. They're just going to say cruising has restarted. And it makes sense for a global business. Hasn't restarted for us here in the United States. But Manny makes some good points right there. They've cruised with 100,000 passengers, only 10 cases of COVID, 100,000 test cruisers. I think they're really setting themselves up to be able to negotiate with the government here in the United States to say, look, we've been doing this. You've got to let us cruise. I hope that that breaks open the floodgates. Thanks for watching the show today. Do me a favor, hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe if you're brand new here. I'm going to go crash back out. Thank you again. Tony with Lido Loca. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.